When the kidnappers forced Jasper to make a choice between two people, he gave up Amanda and chose me, but I didn't go with him because I knew he would regret it. It was the same in my past life after I was rescued. The kidnappers took indecent photos of Amanda. She committed suicide by cutting her wrists the night she came back. Jasper pretended not to care and held the wedding with me as scheduled, but he made me suffer a lot. After marriage 7 years later, I finally forced him to agree to a divorce. However, on our way to get divorced, he lost control of his emotions and drove the cliff even on the verge of death. He was still blaming me. We owed Amanda this in this life, we should atone for her. What right do you have to live in peace? So, having fulfilled my obsession, given a second chance, I didn't want to live like that anymore. Vivienne, come with me. When I realized I had been reborn, a kidnapper was holding a knife to the necks of Amanda and me. They demanded that Jasper choose one of us to save. Jasper's eyes lingered between us. After a fierce internal struggle, he made the same choice as in the past life. He reached out his hand to me, but I firmly shook my head. Jasper, save Amanda first. In this life, I didn't want to owe anyone, let alone live with the burden of a human life on my conscience. Hearing this, Jasper seemed to heave a sigh of relief. Vivienne, you're my fiancé. I should save you first. But since you said so, don't blame me. Then he took Amanda and left the scene as fast as he could, for fear that I would change my mind the next second. But I wasn't like him, regretting my choice right after making it. In the previous life, he rushed over with the money. But the kidnappers increased the price on the spot, saying that only one person could be taken away first. Jasper had no choice but to choose me in the end. However, during the time we went back to raise more money, the kidnappers got lecherous at the sight of Amanda. After taking her indecent photos, they were about to insult her. Fortunately, we arrived in time with the police. But even though it didn't go to the last step for a girl, her dignity had already been completely lost in that situation, and returned home in a daze. When everyone was asleep at night, she cut her wrists. By the time we found out, it was already too late. When Jasper learned the news, he didn't show any sign of concern. He calmly handled Amanda's funeral arrangements and gave her family a large sum of money to soothe them. Even when I offered to postpone the wedding date, he flatly refused. Vivienne, marrying you was a long-planned thing. We can't be influenced by outsiders. But the so-called outsider in his mouth was the one he missed for a full 7 years. Marrying me was just to trap me and make me atone for Amanda. But what was my fault? After Jasper and the others left, I started thinking of ways to save myself, because this time, I wasn't sure if Jasper would come back in the past life. When he pretended to hug Amanda, he dropped a tracker into her pocket. So even if the kidnappers changed their location, we could find Amanda in no time through the tracking device. But just now, he seemed to have forgotten about this. I guess that from the beginning to the end, the person he really wanted to save was Amanda. It was just because of my status as his fiancé that he was afraid of being criticized by others, so he reluctantly chose me. After all, our marriage was just a family-arranged one. And our relationship wasn't that good, and Amanda had accompanied him through the most innocent years. They were childhood sweethearts and confidants. It was normal for Jasper in the past life to regret. In this life, he could finally get what he wanted. I was happy for him. At the same time, I didn't forget to look for an opportunity to escape. I knew that when the kidnappers moved, they would pass by an auto repair shop. The mechanics there fought fiercely. In the previous life, when the kidnappers passed by and wanted to temporarily occupy the repair shop, they didn't expect that the shop owner was a tough guy who flatly refused. A group of people picked up weapons and had a fierce fight. The kidnappers probably never dreamed that there were people more fierce than them. Finally, afraid of causing a big commotion, they had to slink away. Later, when the kidnappers were caught, the shop owner came out to testify. Now, just like in the previous life, they left one person in the car to watch me. The rest all rushed towards the repair shop. My hands were tied behind my back, and the kidnapper sitting in the driver's seat didn't take me seriously at all. So when he wasn't paying attention, I directly bit open the car door handle with my mouth. Then I pushed open the car door and ran forward like crazy. My destination was the same as the kidnappers, the auto repair shop. I wanted to take a gamble, betting that they wouldn't stand by and watch me die, so I rushed in blatantly. At this time, the repair shop was in chaos. I immediately saw the young shop owner. His features were three-dimensional and regular, exuding a sense of righteousness coupled with his agile movements. He had an indescribable coolness, afraid of being accidentally injured. I crouched down and rushed over at lightning speed. As a result, I exerted too much force and directly knocked the person down to the ground. When I fell into his arms, my face turned pale with fright. I'm sorry. I stammered an apology. Could you please help me? The man glanced at me. His brows furrowed the next second. He hugged me and rolled several times on the ground. Then, with a bang, a bullet landed on the spot where we had just lain. If he hadn't noticed in time, I'm afraid I would have been in great danger. Still in a state of shock, the kidnappers realized that I had escaped. So from initially trying to occupy the place, it now turned into asking for me. The two sides were in a standoff. I looked at the man beside me eagerly and whispered, "As long as you can save me, I'll do anything." But he didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the kidnappers, lost in thought. One person behind him couldn't help but remind Felix, "It's better to mind your own business." So his name was Felix. Not getting a reply for a long time, my heart gradually sank. Forget it. Why force someone to do something they don't want to? When the leader of the kidnappers called me to go over for the third time, I started to move. However, soon my shoulder was held down, and I was forced to stop. Felix stepped forward and said to the kidnappers, "She's under my protection today." As if even the heavens were helping me. The rumbling sound of motorcycles suddenly came from outside. A confident smile appeared on Felix's face. "My backup is here." Hearing this, a few kidnappers glared at me unwillingly, cursed a few words, and then left. The heart that had been hanging finally settled down. I secretly let out a sigh of relief and then felt a looseness on my wrist. It was Felix who cut the rope on my hand. "I'm Vivienne. Thank you so much for what you did just now." I reached out my hand to him, but Felix kept staring at my wrist, where there were bloodstains from the rope, looking shocking. "Let me deal with this for you." I shook my head. "It's just a minor injury. It doesn't matter." "Who said just now that as long as I could save you, you'd do anything?" Without further ado, he pressed me onto a stool and then brought a first aid kit. "Bear with it." I bit my lip and watched him carefully treating my wound. Suddenly, a warm feeling spread in my heart. I remembered that in my previous life, not long after I got married to Jasper, once he got drunk when I was helping him back to the room. I just casually mentioned that he should drink less. As a result, he flew into a rage and pushed me away violently. I lost my balance and fell to the ground. The jade bracelet on my wrist hit the floor and broke into pieces. The fragments scratched my wrist. I let out a scream and covered my bleeding wrist, crying out in pain. When Jasper saw this, he just stared at me coldly and said, "Does it hurt?" "It should hurt. Amanda felt 1,000 times more painful than you at that time, but she can't cry out in pain anymore. If it wasn't to save you, how could she have been insulted by the kidnappers? And how could she have committed suicide?" I just sat there on the ground, looking at him in disbelief. My heart grew colder and colder. It took a long time before I found my voice. "But the kidnappers kidnapped Amanda and me to threaten you. And it was you who chose to save me first. Why are you saying these things to me now?" Jasper seemed to have sobered up a lot from his drunkenness, but his eyes were still cold. "Vivienne, I've never been in favor of this arranged marriage. If you hadn't told Grandma that you liked me, Grandma wouldn't have forced me to marry you." "You mean that if there was no me, you only needed to save Amanda, right?" I suddenly laughed. "Jasper, you are crazy. Instead of blaming the kidnappers, you blame me." I got up and went back to the room to deal with the wound myself. From then on, no matter how much it hurt, I never told Jasper again. Now, the person in front of me was blowing gently on my wound. Afraid that I would feel pain, my eyes felt sour. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and asked knowingly, "What are you doing?" Felix looked up, with a pure smile. "When I was a kid and got hurt, my mom used this way. See if it feels better." I nodded. "Yeah, much better." Getting my approval, Felix continued what he was doing. But this atmosphere was soon disrupted. "Felix, I heard that someone was making trouble in your repair shop, so I rushed over right away." "Damn. Where did you find such a beautiful girl?" A tall man with a tattooed arm entered the door. When he saw me, his eyes lit up immediately. This is really rare. I think this is the first time I've seen such a pretty girl here. As the man with the tattooed arm spoke, a strange blush crept onto his face. Seeing this, Felix stood in front of me to block me. Thanks. But the matter has been resolved and other things have nothing to do with you. I'll buy you a drink another day. The man with the tattooed arm was stunned. Then reacted. Felix, now that you have a girl, you don't even want to deal with your brother? He turned his head arrogantly and let out a heavy humda. Seeing that he was angry, Felix rubbed his forehead. Then pulled him aside and said in a low voice, "Can't you be more observant? Go find a place to cool off." Felix. Is she your girlfriend? Do we look like? Yes. You two look really well matched. You're quite perceptive. I don't care, you have to treat me to wedding candies. You'll definitely get them. The two not far away were whispering all the time. Although they had deliberately lowered their voices, those words still clearly reached my ears. To ease the embarrassment, I pretended to be very busy, looking around up and down, but dared not look at them. A few minutes later, the man with the flowery arm was persuaded by Felix and left. After he left, Felix asked me, "Where do you live? I'll take you home." Perhaps due to my selfish thoughts, I suddenly didn't want to go back so soon. Anyway, my parents were always busy with their own things all year round. Even if I didn't go home for a month, they wouldn't ask. As for Jasper, if I guessed right, he probably was reborn. He should be eager to spend the rest of his life with Amanda right now. In the past life, during the 7 years of our marriage, he never took me to any occasions and didn't sleep in the same room with me when others asked about me. He always had a cold face, and finally made me a joke in the circle. In this life, I'll stay far away from him. So I pleaded with Felix. Could you take me in for a few days? I carefully tugged at the corner of his clothes and shook it slightly. Judging from 2 lifetimes, he should be a good person. Moreover, he had the ability to protect me if I depended on him. Would he refuse? Felix suddenly lowered his head and got close to me. His eyes stared at me with an unusually intense look. Little girl, if you keep doing this, I might take it seriously. Perhaps because the distance was too close, I could even smell the fresh soap horn fragrance on him. I subconsciously swallowed and was about to speak when I heard a familiar voice from behind. What are you two doing? It was Jasper. He came with the police. Are you okay? Jasper looked at me, and the concern in his eyes didn't seem fake. I spread my hands. Do I look like I'm in trouble? Jasper fell silent. Amanda then walked in. She glanced at the repair shop, which had resumed normal operation, and asked straightforwardly, "Vivienne, how did you escape from the kidnappers?" "As far as I know, there were 6 of them in total. Your hands were tied, and you were in an unfamiliar place. I'm really curious. What did Amanda mean by this?" Everyone knows that the Windsor family and the Percy family are planning to get married through an arranged marriage at the same time. Both families are eyeing that piece of land in the south of the city, and the auction is in 10 days. The highest bidder will get it, but this kind of thing happened at the most critical moment. Vivienne, it's really hard for me not to think otherwise. Was she suspecting that I hired the kidnappers? I admit that I've never been this speechless in 2 lifetimes. I was really helpless and sympathetic about what happened to Amanda in the previous life, but in this life, it was essentially me who saved her. Yet, right after she was rescued, the first thing she did was come here and bite back at me. It was really disheartening. I suddenly raised my hand and shouted, "Uncle Policeman, someone here is slandering me." Then we were all taken away while waiting for the interrogation. Amanda still wouldn't let it go. "Vivienne, why don't you dare to say?" I snorted. "Why should I talk to you, and not the police?" Amanda was momentarily at a loss for words. Jasper couldn't stand it anymore and immediately stood up to speak for Amanda. "Vivienne, Amanda just wants to understand the truth so that she knows what to say and what not to say during the interrogation later." "What? Do you guys still want to lie in front of the police, Uncle?" Jasper got so angry that he stood up and pointed at me, saying, "Vivienne, you're simply unreasonable." Felix, who came out of the interrogation room, happened to see this scene without saying a word. He stood in front of me. "Put your hand down." His tone was flat, but it carried an irresistible sense of oppression. I hid behind Felix at this moment. I couldn't see the expressions of the two, but I could vaguely sense a smell of gunpowder. I only heard Jasper ask, "Who are you to her?" Felix turned his head to look at me, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. He asked back, "What do you think?" I looked up at the overly perfect sad face that was so close on impulse. I used my thumb and index finger to form a heart. Jasper saw the scene, and his face instantly darkened several shades just then. The police called him to make a statement. After a series of interrogations, things became somewhat clear. The police had identified the suspects. Now, they could only arrest the kidnappers and then conduct further investigations, but I knew that this was done by Jasper's competitor after coming out of the police station. Felix looked at me and said, "Sure, what?" I was completely confused. He explained, "What you asked me this afternoon, it's okay." I finally understood that he was referring to my request for him to take me in. "It's just me and my mom at home. She's gone back to the old house, and I usually live in a repair shop. You can do as you like." I was about to agree, then Jasper, who was beside me, said, "Vivienne, your uncle and aunt already know about your kidnapping now. They should have gotten off the plane and are on their way home. Are you sure you don't want to go back?" I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness in my heart. Jasper, an outsider, knew more about my parents' affairs than I did. Since I could remember, they had always been so busy that they forgot my birthday and even forgot to come to my parents' meetings. That I even deliberately got bad grades and hurt myself on purpose just to see them, because only in this way would they show up briefly and give me a little bit of insignificant love. Later, I stopped expecting. I started learning to celebrate my birthday by myself and paid an aunt who sold flowers to attend my parents' meetings for me because she was very gentle and beautiful. I grew up alone like this until I met Jasper. At the school basketball court, he casually blocked the ball that was about to hit me. The teenager in the sun had an extremely handsome face. A few drops of sweat slid down from his forehead, shining with a crystal clear luster, the corners of his eyes slightly raised, with a hint of imperceptible arrogance, and he said, "Classmate, be careful." With his cold voice, I was smitten with just one glance. At that time, I was so timid that I just whispered a thank you, and then ran away. After that, I began to pay attention to him intentionally or unintentionally. And I also knew that he had a very close female friend, but their relationship seemed to stop at the stage of childhood sweethearts. The secret love in my youth was silent, yet it quietly spread in my heart. Later, even an accidental encounter or an inadvertent glance could make me blush and my heart race. I actually knew very well that I was probably not going to be able to decide on my own marriage in the future, so when I found out that the person for the arranged marriage was actually Jasper, I was happy for a long time. My parents also thought highly of Jasper and usually contacted him more often in the previous life. When I proposed to divorce Jasper, they directly refused. "Jasper is outstanding and can tolerate your bad habits instead of cherishing him. You have to make us worry." I knew that since we got married, the interest of the Windsor family and the Percy family had been tied together, and divorce wasn't such an easy thing. Just like that, I endured year after year. In the end, I suffered from depression and started self-harming, forcing Jasper to agree to divorce me. Since I'd been given a second chance, I want to live for myself. That's why I don't want to go home. However, I suddenly remembered that there was still one thing to be solved, so I had to go home before leaving. I took Felix's phone out of his pocket, entered my number on it, and then dialed. I didn't return the phone to him until I heard the ringing. "Remember to save my number. I'll come to you in a few days." After that, I hailed a taxi for myself and left. From beginning to end, I didn't even give Jasper a glance. When I got home, I found my parents sitting in the living room waiting for me. Before I could say anything, they launched into a tirade of accusations. "What happened today? Jasper has told us everything. Can you stop being so willful in the future? They were kidnappers. You could have lost your life. How could you ask Jasper to save someone else first?" At this point, my mother let out a heavy sigh. "How can we rest assured to hand over the company to you like this? They didn't trust me." So in the previous life, they handed over the company to Jasper. Then they could sit back and relax, chasing their dreams from their youth. My father, who had been sitting on the sofa, suddenly spoke up. "Let's hold the wedding as soon as possible." "I don't agree," I said in a tone that brooked no argument. I came back to tell you that I'll go to the Percy family tomorrow to call off this engagement, whether you agree or not. This time I'm going to make my own decision. And don't try to threaten me with the company. You can give it to whoever you want. It doesn't matter if you don't give it to me. Anyway, I don't want it either. Having been reborn, I already knew the development trend of the next 7 years. I wouldn't end up destitute after leaving these words. I went back to my room. They must be even more disappointed in me. Right? I didn't care. The next day, I got up early. But I saw my mother had made breakfast herself and was waiting for me. Aunt Fang said you got up to look for food last night. It's my fault. I even forgot to ask if you had dinner. I was stunned, unable to figure out why my mother had suddenly become so gentle and considerate. She affectionately tucked the stray hair on my cheek behind my ear and then said in a self-reprochulative tone, "Your father and I reflected last night. Maybe we'd been using the wrong methods all along. We hoped that you could be independent when you grew up. So we didn't dare to spoil you too much, for fear of making you spoiled. If you want to make your own decisions, that's okay. We're not necessarily going to force you to marry into the Percy family." Did this mean they agreed to me calling off the engagement? Suddenly, I felt a pang of sadness. When I was a child, Vivienne had argued and made a scene, but all she got was scolding later. She learned to be obedient and sensible, thinking that she could get their attention that way. But what happened? They just thought she was weak and incompetent. Now, I just said some harsh words using their methods, and it changed their attitude. Even when the car arrived at the Percy family's villa, I still couldn't believe it. In fact, the idea of the Percy family and the Windsor family getting married through an arranged marriage was first proposed by Jasper's grandmother. The reason was that at a banquet, I saved Percy's grandmother who fainted due to hypoglycemia. After the old lady woke up, she was very grateful to me and insisted on adopting me as her god-granddaughter. Through our frequent interactions, we got to know each other well. I would even go to the Percy family's old mansion for a meal from time to time until one time I met Jasper there and found out that the old lady was Jasper's grandmother. The old lady was as shrewd as a fox. She could tell at a glance that I liked Jasper. That's how the following things happened now. Having to tell the old lady in person that I wanted to cancel the engagement. I really felt a bit sorry for her. After all, she had given me the bracelet passed down through generations in the Percy family. Now it seemed that I could only return it. Jasper arrived earlier than me, and Amanda was by his side. They were dressed quite formally. It was just right. After I called off the engagement, they could get engaged right away. It would make everyone happy. But when I put the bracelet on the table, Jasper grabbed my wrist and asked, "What does this mean?" "Oh right. Last night I only said to meet him at the Percy family's old mansion, but didn't mention calling off the engagement." Percy's grandmother looked at the two of us and seemed to realize something. "Vivienne, did your honor do something to let you down?" As she spoke, she gave Amanda a fierce glare. I said respectfully to Percy's grandmother, "Grandma Percy, I want to call off the engagement with Jasper." My tone was very calm, as if I was describing today's weather. And upon hearing this, Jasper's pupils suddenly constricted. He was clearly in disbelief. "Because you left me behind to save someone else yesterday. I think that's the person you want to marry, right?" I looked at Amanda and found that she was also staring at me, looking just like a stubborn little white flower. No, self-doubt flashed in Jasper's eyes. "Didn't you ask me to save Amanda first? I was testing you, and the result is obvious." Jasper was immediately left speechless. Percy's grandmother sighed and said, "I've heard about what happened yesterday. You Ray a good girl at Estuaner who doesn't deserve." "Grandma," Jasper suddenly interrupted Percy's grandmother. He squeezed my wrist tightly, as if he wanted to crush the bones. "Vivienne, I won't agree. Don't even think about it." The wound from yesterday hadn't healed yet. With his grip, it would probably start bleeding again. Enduring the pain. I suddenly found it very funny. In the previous life, after Amanda died, he thought about her for a full 7 years. After being reborn, he couldn't wait to save Amanda. I thought he was deeply in love with her and couldn't wait to marry her. I tugged at the corner of my lips and said with a smile, "If you're like this, I'll find the media tomorrow and unilaterally announce the cancellation of the engagement. Then it will be your Percy family's face that will be lost." After saying that, I pried Jasper's fingers off one by one and turned to leave. I didn't expect Jasper to chase after me just then. Felix's motorcycle arrived at the gate of the Percy family. Because I didn't want to entangle with Jasper too much, I simply said, "Sorry. My boyfriend is here to pick me up." Jasper frowned unhappily and sneered, "Vivienne, are you sure you want to find such a poor guy as your boyfriend? Can he give you happiness? Otherwise, should I find someone like you, who is hypocritical and fickle?" After saying that, I walked towards Felix, but the next second, my wrist was grabbed again. Ah! I let out a cry of pain. Only then did Jasper, the one who caused all this, notice the wound on my wrist. He looked flustered and tried to explain. I didn't know you were hurt." My smile sarcastic. "As if you'd care even if you knew." Felix couldn't hold back any longer. When he saw this, he rushed up and punched Jasper to the ground. The movement was quick, accurate and forceful. A mouthful of blood spat out from Jasper's mouth. There was a fierce look in his eyes. That he didn't dare to act rashly, Felix then said in a warning tone, "Stay away from her." After that, he put his helmet on my head, started the throttle and took me away. The motorcycle sped through the mountains, and the scenery in front of me changed rapidly. I leaned on Felix's back, feeling the excitement brought by the speed. It seemed that in this way, I could temporarily forget the unhappiness before. "Girlfriend, where are we going?" Felix's voice came from the front. I couldn't help but laugh. It seemed he had heard everything I said just now, so I naturally put my arms around his waist and said, "Since you've called me girlfriend, can I go to your place? I'm hungry right now." "Sure thing. I'm actually a pretty good cook." "Then I want for dishes." "It's a must." Felix's laughter echoed in the mountains. I don't know if it was because of his influence, but at this moment, I felt extremely carefree. Felix's house was bigger than I expected. He fumbled around and brought me a brand new pair of men's slippers. They might be a bit big, but this is the only new pair at home. I put them on casually and smiled, saying, "It doesn't matter. Fortunately, I come back and clean up occasionally. It shouldn't be too messy." Clearly he was the owner, but he seemed more nervous than me. I plopped down on the sofa, propped my chin with my hand, and looked at him, saying, "I can't cook. I'll have to trouble you today." Felix didn't go to cook immediately. Instead, he brought a first aid kit over. The wound that had been bandaged yesterday was pinched by Jasper today, and the blood that oozed had stuck to the gauze. Now it had dried and adhered to the wound. Felix carefully poured iodine on the gauze, trying to separate the wound from the gauze. Such meticulous work was done very seriously by this big guy. Half an hour later, it was finally re-bandaged. He also didn't forget to remind me, "Don't get this wet in the next 2 days." I subconsciously said, "Then how can I take a bath?" "It's okay not to wash for 2 days. After thinking for a while, he added, "I won't mind." "How dare you?" "I don't dare." "May I fix it?" "Then I'll go cook?" "Okay." I nodded with a smile. I suddenly realized that every time I was with Felix, I always felt extremely relaxed. An hour later, he cooked for dishes. They were sweet and sour pork tenderloin, garlic shrimp, steamed fish, and cold cucumber salad. He handed me the chopsticks and bowls. "Have a taste." After trying several dishes, I gave him a thumbs up. The dishes were excellent in color, aroma, and taste, unforgettable, just like him. It seemed I wouldn't have to worry about having no place to eat in the future. In the afternoon, I received a call from my father. He mainly asked me to participate in the auction in 10 days, saying that if I could win the land in the south of the city, the company would be fully handed over to me. I knew about that piece of land. There were several other enterprises eyeing it in the previous life. Because of the kidnapping, I was quite frightened. Plus, later, Amanda's death couldn't leave me completely unaffected, so I got seriously ill and missed that auction. But even if I hadn't been ill, I wouldn't have competed with Jasper at that time. I had him in my heart and eyes, thinking that I had finally found someone to entrust my life to. But at that time, the Percy group was facing a debt crisis. It was still quite difficult for Jasper to win that land. In the end, I transferred a sum of money from the Windsor group to help him. Jasper finally won the auction after getting the land. He built a theme park there, recruited many merchants, and within a few years, successfully pushed the Percy group to a new height. From this it can be seen that that piece of land was a sure profit project otherwise, so many people wouldn't be eyeing it. And this time, I was determined to get it. I didn't expect that Amanda would come to beg me unlike her aggressive attitude a few days ago. This time, she lowered her stance and pleaded with me in a humble tone. Can you not call off the engagement with Jasper? There has always been just a friendship between him and me. As long as you promise, I'll never appear in front of you two again. I looked at her in silence besides being speechless. I felt nothing else in my heart. Yes. In the previous life, I also always thought that they were just good friends. That after Amanda died, Jasper's behavior was definitely not just about mourning a good friend. I remember the day he agreed to divorce me. It was the 10th time I self-harmed after suffering from depression. When he came back, he saw me lying on the ground. Covered in blood. He might have been afraid that I would die in his house. So he finally agreed to divorce me, but on the way to get divorced, he suddenly asked me, "Do you know today is Amanda's death anniversary?" I looked at him blankly and shook my head. I could barely take care of myself, let alone remember such things, but my reaction completely angered Jasper. He pounded the steering wheel violently, scolding me for being cold-blooded and heartless. The life you have now was bought with Amanda's life, but you've never been grateful. You even forgot her death anniversary. You only think about leaving. Do you think you can get rid of the condemnation of your conscience like this, Vivienne? You really make me sick. I was also extremely angry at that time. So I retorted unceremoniously, "Yes, Pi, you know how to be grateful you can't forget her. Then why don't you die with her?" As soon as I finished speaking, Adentha filled my obsession. The car suddenly swayed and finally rushed straight down the cliff, even on the verge of death. Jasper was still blaming me. We owed Amanda this. In this life, we should atone for her. What right do you have to live in peace? But in this life, neither of us owes the other anything. I really wanted to see what kind of ending Jasper would have. Constantly recalling things from the previous life really made me sick. Do you not understand the situation? Now both the Percy family and the Windsor family have tacitly agreed that this engagement is void. Did Jasper send you here? She shook her head. Manda, I just don't want to see him lose Vivienne. You used to like Jasper a lot, right? This time it's my fault. I shouldn't have suspected that you hired the kidnappers. And I shouldn't have come back from abroad suddenly, otherwise, Jasper wouldn't have made you sad by saving me. I was a bit confused by her rambling. Don't want to see him lose? Amanda explained. The Percy group needs a piece of land in the south of the city to turn things around. Vivienne, if you're determined to call off the engagement, can you not compete with Jasper? I sneered. You're daydreaming. Now I finally understood. In the previous life, when we rushed to save Amanda, the police had already arrested the kidnappers, and the 2 huge ransoms had been successfully recovered. Coupled with the money I took from the Windsor group, Jasper was able to successfully acquire that land. But now, because of my self-rescue, the kidnappers were alerted and had fled, and the police still hadn't found any useful clues, let alone recovered the ransom. So to speak, the Percy group had already lost its advantage in getting the land. Amanda still didn't give up. She gritted her teeth and suddenly knelt down in front of me. Vivienne, I'm begging you, you may not love him, but can you not ruin him? I've seen moral blackmail, but never such a shameless one. I bent down, got close to her, and said softly, when you heard that Jasper was going to get engaged to me, you went abroad, but then you came back suddenly after hearing about our engagement. You're right. It's all your fault, so you should help him yourself. Although you may not be as wealthy as the Windsor family, you can still help a bit, right? Besides, the money he took last time was to save you. It has nothing to do with me. Should I say you're stupid, or I'm stupid for you coming to beg me? Upon hearing this, Amanda's small face turned deathly pale. She opened her mouth but finally didn't say anything. It would be best if she could figure it out. If not, she would just suffer. During this period, I went home and found that my parents had left again. It seemed they were still the same, only caring about their own pursuits and never changing. And all they needed was a qualified heir, not caring who it was. Well, it's like I care about them that much. I lay at home for 2 days and my hand was almost healed. I took a car from the garage and headed straight to Felix's repair shop. But before seeing Felix, I met the guy with the flowery arm again. He called me awkwardly, "Hello, sister-in-law. Where's Felix?" I asked him. He scratched his head and replied, Felix went out. Do you have something to talk to him about? Right after he said that, he slapped his own mouth and muttered to himself, can't she come to see him if there's no business? What a stupid mouth I have. Then he grinned at me, sister-in-law, take a rest first. Felix should be back soon. I nodded and sat down on the sofa on the coffee table. There were several different sets of tea sets. I made a pot of tea and sipped it carefully. Thomas didn't leave. There was a look of great curiosity on his face, and his eyes were secretly sizing me up. Seeing me making tea myself, he explained, I'm a rough guy. I don't know how to do this. Usually, Felix makes it for me to drink. Done tea, take it to heart. I looked up and asked, what's your name, Thomas? Does he treat you very well? I don't know why, but I just had this feeling. Thomas shook his head. I thought I had guessed wrong. Then I heard him say, no, Felix treats every one of us very well. I raised my eyebrows. Oh? Tell me about it. Most of the employees in this repair shop are from poor mountainous areas. They all have some physical deficiencies to some extent. For example, Akwan, who is in charge of engine repair, can't speak, but as soon as he hears a sound, he can tell where the problem is. And Chen Ping, who is in charge of maintenance, is lame. Adan, who is in charge of painting, can trot a single word. When they first came to this city, they just wanted to make a living, but when they got here, they found that with physical disabilities, no diplomas and no skills, it was hard to even find a decent job. It was Felix who took them in, gave them time to learn skills, provided food and accommodation, and paid them salaries. So a group of us have been following Felix wholeheartedly and won't go anywhere. So that's how it is. I looked at Thomas again and asked, what about you? Hearing this, his face showed a solemn expression for the first time. I met Felix 5 years ago. At that time, I offended someone and was almost beaten to death. It was Felix who saved me. Since then, I've sworn to follow Felix for the rest of my life. If anyone dares to bully him, they have to step over my dead body first. To be honest, after hearing these words, I was shocked. All along, the environment I was in was lonely, and there were few people who could treat me sincerely. But Felix was able to gather such a group of people to work with him wholeheartedly. I really envied that and suddenly couldn't wait to see him. Do you know what he went? Thomas thought for a while and said, Felix didn't say the exact location. He just said someone was looking for him, and it seemed to be around Tiancheng Square. I was about to leave when Thomas seemed to remember something and said, oh, by the way, sister-in-law, actually, Felix is quite rich. He's just very low-key. Originally, he didn't want us to call you sister-in-law. He said you're a girl from a wealthy family and we should call you young lady. I frowned. Why was Felix still using such an old-fashioned title? But I never dreamed that I would see Felix and Amanda sitting together in a coffee shop at Tiancheng Square. I didn't know what Amanda was saying to Felix. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying, and Felix just kept listening, with his brows furrowed the whole time. After watching for a while, Amanda suddenly stood up and moved from the opposite seat to sit right next to Felix. My intuition told me that there was something more to their relationship. If it were me before today, I might have left like that and blocked Felix, because after being hurt once, I definitely couldn't tolerate any impure relationship. But if it was Felix, having fulfilled my obsession, I wanted to believe him. Once, just as I was about to walk into the coffee shop, I saw Felix quickly get up from his seat as if he was afraid of getting something dirty on him. Then our eyes met as I just walked into the store. Compared to my calmness, Felix was stunned for a moment. Obviously, he didn't expect me to be here. Then he strode towards me. Vivienne. Amanda also chased out at this time, with a look of urgency on her face. Mr. Felix, as long as you can agree. Amanda's following words stopped abruptly when she saw me. However, she quickly composed herself and instead asked me, Vivienne, why are you here? Could it be that you're also looking for Mr. Felix? As she spoke, she consciously leaned a little towards Felix. But Felix was very alert. As soon as she leaned over, he immediately moved to my side. He looked at me with a somewhat innocent look in his eyes and said, Vivienne, I pretended to be fierce and said, I'll deal with you when we get back. Amanda looked at our way of interacting, and the light in her eyes gradually dimmed. Vivienne, Evienne, I really underestimated you. I shrugged and replied, yeah. I think so too. Amanda was left speechless, her face turned different colors, green, white, and red in turns, which was quite a sight in fact. I'm not the kind of person who would easily suffer losses. In the previous life, if I hadn't taken those who didn't care about me so seriously, I wouldn't have ended up like that. Felix took me back home. By this time it was almost completely dark, we just huddled on the sofa, neither of us speaking. After a long time, he finally broke the silence. Are you going to ask? Didn't you say you'd deal with me when we got back? I said in a low voice, if you want to tell me, you'll do it even if I don't ask. If you don't want to, asking won't help. There was no obvious expression on Felix's face. Do you know why Amanda came to me? I shook my head. On the way back, I thought of many reasons. For example, did Amanda have a crush on Felix? Or was Jasper jealous of our relationship and deliberately sent Amanda to annoy me? They were close and would do anything for each other. But then Felix suddenly asked me if I was eyeing a piece of land in the south of the city. I was shocked and said, how do you know? Because the right to use that land is in my hands now. It was left to me by my dad. How could it be such a coincidence? So Amanda still wasn't giving up and directly went to Felix, trying to get the land through him. But how did she know that the land belonged to Felix? There was only one answer, that is, Jasper told her. When he got the land in the previous life, he must have had contact with Felix, so he knew. Seeing that Felix kept staring at me, I immediately realized something. You don't think that I got close to you for this land, do you? Somehow, a feeling of discomfort welled up in my heart, so, while I was having doubts about him, he was also suspecting me. I lowered my head, trying to laugh, but couldn't. Felix saw this, suddenly cupped my face and said seriously, silly girl. Of course I don't think so. At first, this thought did flash through my mind, but I quickly dismissed it. I trust my judgment. I asked, just like when you saved Thomas and the others? Felix raised his eyebrows. No. You're different from them. I saved them out of kindness, but I saved you because I was attracted to you. Felix, you're really good at this. I pouted, complaining a bit discontentedly. Being so good at it. I wonder how many girlfriends he had. Felix looked at me affectionately. The hand holding my face moved slightly, making me raise my head. Then a kiss landed as light as a dragonfly skimming the water, just a gentle touch. It's not about being good at it. It comes from the heart, naturally, following my instincts. I just felt my cheeks burning. And my heart was pounding out of control, afraid that he would notice my appearance. I buried my face in his arms. The position where my ear was pressed was right on his chest. His heartbeat was like thunder, deafening, thumping one after another, as if loudly proclaiming his love for me. I closed my eyes to feel it. After a long time I said, Felix, having to filled sigh. I like you as much as you like me. He didn't answer, but showed his attitude with his actions. He held me even tighter. So tight that it seemed he wanted to blend me into his bones and blood. The next day when I got up, Felix handed me a document. I took it and saw that it was a land use right transfer agreement. And the name filled in was actually mine. Felix, are you crazy? Do you know what this means? I could hardly believe it. How could someone be so stupid? I've withdrawn from the auction. You want this? And I happen to have it. There has no reason not to give it to you. It would be a lie to say I wasn't touched. My whole heart felt full, warm and swelling. I blinked my eyes, forcing back the tears. This was a good thing. I couldn't cry since he showed such great sincerity. I couldn't be outdone. I pulled him up and said as we walked, before signing, come with me to a place first. The place I took him to was the marriage registration office. Felix kept asking me to confirm. Have you really thought this through? I looked at him and smiled. Are you afraid that I'll take your stuff, kick you to the curb, and then find someone even more handsome and wealthy? Felix furrowed his brows and thought for a moment. Well, I can't say for sure about wealthier, but it should be pretty hard to find someone more handsome. Yeah, that's why I brought you here. I didn't expect Jasper to show up so soon. Felix and I had just come out of the marriage registration office, and the red marriage certificates in our hands hadn't even been put away yet. Jasper looked at this scene, his face extremely ugly, and even the fists he clenched were trembling. He said, Vivienne, you ended up with him after all. Crazy. I rolled my eyes, not planning to pay him any attention. That Jasper grabbed me, and 2 lines of tears suddenly streamed down his eyes. These were probably just crocodile tears, right? That I did have something to say to Jasper, so I asked Felix to get in the car and wait for me first. When only the 2 of us were left, Jasper couldn't wait to say, Vivienne, I regret it, I really do. You can hit me or scold me. Just please forgive me. I sneered and asked, regret? Regret what? Regret not saving me or regret not treating me well in the past life? Hearing this, Jasper let go of my wrist, and the color drained from his face in an instant. It seemed that even he didn't want to recall the things from the past life after all. Those memories clearly exposed all his wrongdoings. At this point, Jasper started slapping himself in the face, saying as he did, I was possessed by the devil. I was wrong, I deserve to die. But Vivienne, is there still a chance for us? I was silent for a moment, then asked casually, Jasper, what do you think? He stopped his action, lowered his eyes, looking dejected. But then, as if he had thought of something, a glimmer of hope appeared in his eyes. No, hope appeared in his eyes. It's Amanda. She's the one who ruined us. If she hadn't come back suddenly, there wouldn't have been so many problems. And I never asked her to come to you. It was all her own doing, her unrequited love. He grabbed my hand again, pleading humbly. Please believe me one last time, okay? The person I've loved from beginning to end is you. Really. I know I'm guilty, so I won't ask anything of you. I just beg you to look at me. Even if you make me your servant. I'm willing. I looked at Jasper in horror, unable to believe these words were coming from him. I forcefully pulled my hand back and even wiped it on my clothes. Jasper, what are you after? I certainly didn't believe he really loved me. Once you've experienced true love, this kind of thing just seems like unwanted trash. Jasper put on an extremely affectionate look. I realized it too late. Anyway, I won't give up on you. Jasper, if you keep this up, I'll call the police. Hearing this, Jasper froze in place, and tears kept streaming down his face as if they were free. I just felt annoyed and couldn't wait to leave. The only person you've ever loved is yourself. Whether it's Amanda or me, neither of us is as important as your own interests, but you're not willing to accept it. You can't stand the fact that I can live a better life after leaving you. So you want to drag me back into the abyss again. But Jasper, I'm not alone anymore. My husband now is really fierce and fights. And he has a group of people working for him. If you think your life is too long, you can give it a try. After I finished speaking, I glanced at Amanda not far away. In fact, I had noticed her following us a long time ago. But I didn't say anything. I hoped she could see Jasper's true nature clearly and not be cheated and still count the money for him. It was like this farce had come to an end when my father learned that I had successfully acquired that piece of land. He handed over the company to me for management as promised. I didn't tell them that Felix and I had gotten married because I didn't want anyone to disturb us. I just wanted to live a peaceful life with him. I shuttled between the company and home every day, and time slipped by quietly. Not long after, I heard that Amanda was going abroad. The person who loved Jasper the most in this world didn't want him anymore. Before she left, she posted a long article on social media, condemning Jasper for his betrayal and cold-bloodedness. Throughout the text when I was free, I boosted the popularity of that article a bit. As a result, the Percy Group, which was already in a debt crisis, was further affected by this incident. Its stock price kept dropping, and it was said to be on the verge of bankruptcy. Jasper was so busy that he was in a complete mess, running around looking for help. But at this time, who would be willing to help him? So, having fulfilled my atone, he came to me again. It had been several months since the last time we met. I was now busy developing that piece of land. Every day just thinking about making a fortune in the future made me full of energy. But Jasper now was a far cry from the person I saw a few months ago. His face was extremely emaciated, with dark circles under his eyes, unshaven. And he was full of a sense of decadence. I asked him, "Do you want me to help you?" Unexpectedly. He shook his head. He told me, "Vivienne, I suffered from depression. I haven't slept well for months. I finally understand the pain you went through before. This is my retribution. I tried hard to suppress the corners of my mouth from rising and said, how can this be retribution? This is a blessing for you. Think about it. In the past life, you died with the regret of not saving Amanda. Even though you were successful and had me by your side, you were still unhappy now. God gave you a second chance. Although you have nothing now, you've made up for the regret of the previous life. That's enough. God has been pretty good to you. People, they can't be too greedy. When they get something, they will lose something. You can't have it all. That was also the last time I saw Jasper, because 3 months later, on the night when the Percy Group announced its complete bankruptcy, Jasper got drunk, his depression flared up, and he fell into the bathtub. By the time he was discovered, he was already dead. Truly, what goes around comes around. When Felix learned about this, he was massaging my back. My dad once told me that if a person has poor character, they're doomed not to go far. I turned over and couldn't help asking, so how far do you think we can go? Felix thought seriously for a moment and said, given our characters, isn't it reasonable to say 100 years? I couldn't agree more. Naturally, it's not excessive. Then it's not too much for your husband to want a full meal, is it? Felix stared at me with burning eyes. The reflection of me in his eyes was like the most delicate rose in the world. They say loving someone is like raising a flower. Felix doted on me, holding me dear, not willing to let me suffer any grievance or hardship. And I became even more outstanding. Things that I didn't get into lifetimes. Felix gave me more than enough. I put my hands around his neck, kissed him on the lips, and said, not too much.